Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. I am joined alongside my good friend and special guest, Advaith Kumar. It is Tuesday, August 28th, and we are jumping into a after-game analysis on the loss to the Cleveland Browns and how that game is not Justin Fields' fault. Before we dive into it, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Stupid Card Tray. Stupid Card Tray always saves the day. I have one, Tony has one, Advaith's going to get one, and 70,000 other people have one across the United States. Head over to the website in our description to get 16% off your entire order using code JAYJ16. Stay tuned for more and make sure that you get yourself a Stupid Card Tray for when you're sitting on the couch and enjoying the Bears. Well, the best you can. Advaith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be talking to you about the atrocious mess that Nagy has created and about how this really isn't Justin Fields' fault, because it's not Justin Fields' fault. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not Justin Fields' fault. You know, the rookie was thrown out there for the Wolves and he got slaughtered. So let's go into it really fast. Initial reaction. Advaith, 2 days after the game, you know, we've obviously seen a lot of stats come out about, you know, how he had less than a second to throw the ball, 9 sacks. His offensive line completely broke down. There was only one play farther than 15 yards again in this game. What are your initial thoughts on Justin Fields' play as a whole? Did you think that is it his fault? Is it his fault? Yes or no?
I mean, it's tough. It's watching Justin Fields on Sunday, and I painfully made myself watch that game. But watching Justin Fields get sacked time after time again, watching that offense crumble, it was hard, and it's still hard to process it right now, 2 days after that game. Whenever I watch that game, there's like a viral video, I guess, of Myles Garret sacking Justin Fields, and it still hurts to see how the Bears did not help Justin Fields at all, how Matt Nagy did not help Justin Fields at all. So to answer your question, it so hurts that the Chicago Bears lost to the Cleveland Browns in the way that they did. If it were close, I would not be complaining, but the way that we lost today, it's going to hurt for a while.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Advaith, you look at the film and Justin Fields couldn't do anything. A guy with 4.44 40 speed, and he didn't even go outside the pocket. He only dropped out of the pocket. I believe it was 8 times, was it? He was very just in the pocket, and that's what happens. And Myles Garret even said that himself. He said, you know, it was a cakewalk for us as the Cleveland Browns defense. There was nothing surprising. It was the same thing over and over again, whether it had been Justin Fields just staying in the pocket or David Montgomery just running it, you know, off of James Daniels or Cody Whitehair. There was nothing there that tricked the Cleveland defense, and that was definitely a problem. And guess who's calling the plays? Matt Nagy. So let's go into Justin Fields' day as a whole. He was 6 for 20 with 68 passing yards. He had 3 rushes for 12 yards. He was sacked 9 times. Just want to repeat that, 9 times. Cleveland's Pro Bowler Myles Garret had 4.5 of those sacks, so he was half a Cleveland Browns record against the Chicago Bears. The Bears had 5 sacks, but, you know, obviously Cleveland had almost twice as many. And 5 sacks is a lot to give up in a game, so absolute embarrassment by the offensive line, not protecting Justin Fields. He ran for his life all day and could never hit any of his receivers. His receivers were some of the most guarded receivers in the entire NFL on Sunday. In fact, there was almost no space anywhere for Justin Fields to throw to an open receiver. I mean, there was a few opportunities where he could have thrown it to David Montgomery, but those opportunities, he ended up getting sacked. Justin Fields had less than a second. He actually had 0.78 seconds to throw the ball on average throughout the game. And Justin Fields did have an x-ray after the game due to a hand injury. Came back negative. Justin Fields says he's fine and he will be ready to go Sunday if he is called upon. So, Advaith, where does the finger point in regards to Justin Fields' improvement?
I mean, I think this is a good game for him to learn from and what he can do better. I think one of the things he has to improve upon is getting the ball out faster, because if you watch Andy Dalton play, Andy Dalton just gets out the ball really, really fast. And then also calling out the blitzes. You know, I know that offensive line is not very good and certainly not his fault, but if he can see like Myles Garret coming off the edge, or he can see that the Browns are blitzing or running a 3-4, a man-to-man, and call that out, that might help the offensive line a little bit, and that might help result in like maybe less sacks. But again, with this offensive line, I don't know how much that's going to help him.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have a 39-year-old left tackle in Jason Peters going up against a very young and athletic Myles Garret, who's potentially going to be he is at the level of Khalil Mack, TJ Watt. I mean, he's one of the best pass rushers in the entire league. There's no doubt about that. And you're putting a guy who is slower, yes, more experienced, but has not the ability that he used to in order to guard Myles Garret. And I totally agree with you on that. Also, Justin Fields was trapped. He had nowhere to go in regards to the pocket. There was no rollouts. There was no, quick snaps. There was no trick plays. I believe they ran the Wildcat one time, and it really didn't work out all that well for the Chicago Bears. The only play that really had a big game for the offense, there was two of them, and I'll do one rushing and one passing. The first, if David Montgomery's first rushing play, which was for 12 yards against the Cleveland defense, everyone was like, oh, looking good. Looks like Monty's going to have another big day like he did against the Rams. And Montgomery really didn't do much after that. But then Justin Fields, 48-yard pass completion, it wasn't even completed, but it was a pass interference call on the Cleveland secondary. It was going to Allen Robinson. It put the Bears within the 10-yard line, and the Bears ended up walking out with a field goal. Matt Nagy did not go for it on fourth down. So it was a complete disaster. The longest play of the day is a pass interference call on Cleveland's defense. Completely unacceptable. And, the offense as a whole, if you watch these play calls against Cleveland, it was always, I don't know if you play Madden, Advaith, but I know Adam Kinross is going to enjoy this. Quick slants. That's all Matt Nagy was really running, was quick slants. There was no one going deep down the field in order to expand the defense, in order to get those defenders to go chase after Darnell Mooney or Marquise Goodwin or Allen Robinson or anyone along those lines. There was no separation. So that's why Cleveland's defense was always contained within a small area. And they looked like they were always playing zone because there was no trick plays. So Advaith, if you could do one thing different, if you're Matt Nagy, and I know there's plenty of things that you could do different if you're Matt Nagy, but what is one thing you would have done different on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns that could have expanded the offense overall for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, well, if I'm Matt Nagy, if I'm the CEO of this team, I'm going to see what my employees' weaknesses are and what their strengths are, and I'm going to adapt to them. When I watched Matt Nagy on Sunday, it did not seem like he was a good CEO. It seemed like he was a failure at CEO. And quite honestly, it seemed like Matt Nagy seemed like the worst coach in the NFL. And I'm talking about Matt Nagy did seem like the worst coach in the NFL based on the offensive production that the Bears had. And he has to play better. He has to call better plays, and he has to adapt to his quarterback. And that's what it is at the end of the day. If I'm Matt Nagy, I'm saying, okay, what does Justin do best? Okay, well, Justin is very good outside the pocket. Justin's very good when he uses his legs. That's when he's most lethal because he has that running ability at 4.4 speed. So I'm going to run a few play action plays. I have a really great running back in David Montgomery. So I'm going to do some play action. I'm going to let Justin Fields get out the pocket. And, with my offensive line, I don't know if I can trust them. So using Justin Fields' legs, hey, maybe I can better succeed. And then I'm also going to say, Justin, what do you want to run? Instead of going with my plan, I'm going to adapt to Justin Fields and not have the same game plan that I had for Andy Dalton, but change it up for Justin Fields. And that's what I think Matt Nagy should do. Will Matt Nagy do that? I don't know if his stubbornness will allow him to do that. I don't know if he will. And that might just be his end of that just might spell the end of his time here in Chicago.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up. There's a report that just came out today that within internally House Hall that if the Bears lose to the Detroit Lions this Sunday at Soldier Field, Matt Nagy will become the first Bears head coach to be fired in the middle of the season. So, Advaith, if you're a Bears fan, and I know it would stink to go to 1-3, especially after the Packers had that big win on Monday Night Football against the 49ers, would you rather the Bears lose in order to get Matt Nagy out the building? And do you think that the players will purposely lose to get Matt Nagy out the building?
I mean, it's tough. Personally, yes, I would like to see the Bears lose against the Lions because people are forgetting, the Lions are a very, very great NFL team. They nearly beat the Ravens. They nearly beat the 49ers, and they were playing pretty good against the Packers. And the Lions have been doing really, really good this season. I don't even know if the Bears can beat them. I don't even know Matt Nagy can beat them looking at what we did. Like, if you look at what we had no offense. The Lions have a pretty good defense. They were able to kind of shut down Lamar Jackson. If the Lions just followed the same script as the Browns did, I think that the Bears will lose this game. But I don't know if Matt Nagy will be fired. I mean, I think that until we get some new owners, a new president, until they get rid of Ted Phillips, I don't know if anything will change here in Chicago. We need a full teardown this year. And everyone, including Ryan Pace, Ted Phillips, George McCaskey, have to go.
Yeah, and you know what stinks is that I like Ryan Pace. I think that he's done a fine job. He's definitely had hiccups for sure. But you got to kind of look at this now, and a lot of people say Mitch was the biggest mistake that Ryan Pace made. But now no one's really answering the question to, was Ryan Pace or is Matt Nagy really the issue with Mitch Trubisky? I mean, Mitch Trubisky could have been a great quarterback, and Matt Nagy could be the problem after everything. So overall, Ryan Pace, yes, you have Kevin White, and yes, you have some very other questionable signings and draft picks. But Ryan Pace has done a fine job. I just can't. If you clean house, you got to do it right, and you got to get rid of everybody, kind of like you said. So absolutely agree. Final question before we go into the topic number 3, Advaith. I know we kind of gone off script here, but there's also been reports that all 3 quarterbacks on the Chicago Bears roster, Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, and Nick Foles, are all potentially in play to start against the Detroit Lions. After last week's game, and if you had to choose between those 3, who are you having start against the Lions?
Honestly, I'm still going to go with Justin Fields because the experience is what's going to make him into a great quarterback. And I get the nature of him sitting and him learning, but you learn from experience. You learn best when you do those things. You learn best when you take a test, like when you study for a test, by studying, by actually going through the materials, by actually doing the math problems. You just don't learn by just watching the teacher or watching the class do it. You learn by actually doing the material. And so that's why I think that Justin Fields should start week 5. Yeah.
Week 4. It's week 4 this week. Yeah. I you know what, Advaith? I agree with you. I think that Justin Fields should be on that field. At this point, if the Bears are going to tear this thing down, and this is a total overreaction, but if this is it for the Bears, I mean, this could be the season for the Bears. Like, if the Bears lose this game, it truly shows that they're not getting rid of Matt Nagy. They're not unless Bill Lazor becomes play caller today, which I keep looking down at my phone saying, okay, come on. Like, I'm waiting for that Bill Lazor is the Bears play caller notification. I think that you should just have Justin Fields out there. You should just have him continuously go out there, get reps. And honestly, if I'm Justin Fields, don't listen to your play caller. Call your own plays at the line. That shows a leader. Do it. Why not? Matt Nagy is not doing anything for you. If he's calling the same play over and over again, nothing's going to change. Take the game into your own hand. And if you want to win, if you want to become a legend of the Chicago Bears, going against Matt Nagy, who's definitely on his way out the door anyway, no matter what, it's going to get you a lot of respect in this league. I know that's a very crazy take, but if they don't, and it's between Dalton and Foles to play that game, let's say Justin Fields doesn't play, I'll throw Foles out there. Let Foles get, demolished by the Lions defensive line, even though they're not nearly as good as the Cleveland Browns. But, Andy Dalton, don't rush him back, because Andy Dalton looked pretty good in those first couple games with the Bears. So, more to come on that. And Advaith, final question for you. If you had to put the blame on anyone in regards to the situation for the Chicago Bears, are you going with Matt Nagy or Ryan Pace?
I'm going with Matt Nagy because Matt Nagy can call better plays. Like, the fact that, didn't Larry Borum get injured on like some QB sneak or something? Like, why even call a QB sneak with Andy Dalton? Why did you risk and get your rookie left tackle injured? And I just don't get it. Why does he have to lie to us about Tevin Jenkins? Just come up with full honesty. Why does he have to put Justin Fields in a position for him to fail? And why can't he adapt to Justin Fields and play to Justin Fields' strengths? And for all those reasons, I'm going to say this is on Matt Nagy. As much as I want to blame Ryan Pace for neglecting the offensive line, he did. He got Tevin Jenkins. He got Larry Borum. He did fairly well, but I think it's on Matt Nagy. It's fairly on Matt Nagy for the failures that we are seeing today with the Chicago Bears.
I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of people haven't been pointing the finger at Ryan Pace either, because of my earlier statement is that, Ryan Pace went out and got Mitch Trubisky back in 2017, who was ranked the number 2 quarterback in the draft beside Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes, depending on who you asked. Or he was the number 3. Mitch Trubisky could have been a great quarterback for the Chicago Bears. We saw flashes. There was no doubt about it. But it was Matt Nagy's fault for constantly putting him in the position with play calling. But there's no denial either that the offensive line has been a need for the Chicago Bears. Yes, Ryan Pace went out and got Sam Mustipher, James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, Larry Borum, and Tevin Jenkins. And unfortunately, your 2 tackles are injured. So it is what it is. And we're dealing with what we have now. And Ifedi was good. He was the number 1 ranked tackle after week 2. And after week 3, it was an absolute disaster. So the Bears were exposed. Matt Nagy was exposed. And who knows what's going to happen next. So with that, Advaith, thank you very much for coming on. It's always great to have you. And I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate coming on to your show, the best show in Chicago Bears YouTube. So thank you.
Thanks, Advaith. Always a pleasure. And we're going to have Advaith on a lot more coming up over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you stay tuned, and we'll be on his channel as well. So stay tuned for that. His channel will be in the description. But with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside Advaith Kumar, and we will see you guys next time.